Cross over to a live interview that's happening at Spice, where the discussion is on postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. And they have a Mr. Rashid Ahmed. She is a counseling psychologist. So let's just go and listen in.
So most of the time we know how Nairobi is specifically. Like there's a lot of movement. We don't live sometimes in clean environment. Like you will go to work until, let's say, the 8th month or the 9th month, or when you'll decide to give birth. So those external conditions have high likely chances of affecting how your baby will and your hormonal balance with how it is, with how the hormonal balance in your body. So that one, and also the social environment. So do you have people to support you? If you don't have a strong support system who understands you, you'll start having all this you'll likely have chances of developing this kind of thoughts. Because imagine you've given birth, let's say, to your child all alone. There's nobody to support you. Maybe you're expected to provide for it. You don't know you're a new mother. All these kind of things that you're supposed to go through, now you'll start translating it differently. And the worst part of what is it called, postpartum psychosis, is when it happens to a religious person. Because when it happens to a religious person, all the chantings will be now religious chantings. Right? So you'll be like, God is sending me a message to do this. God is sending me a message to do this. God is sending me a message to do this. And you end up hurting yourself or harming yourself because of the messages that you receive.
Wow. Okay. It's an interesting conversation that we're having. We've now also joined in with KTN News, who are joining us. Amisa Rashid Ahmed is a counseling psychologist. She's a mental health expert and founder and executive director of Nivisha Foundation, which has been working since 2019 to promote basically mental well-being and welfare of people in the community, focusing on young girls and women.
Yeah.
Right? And we're talking about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis and understanding what it is that new mothers go through. And it doesn't have to be that you're getting this with your first child. You can be getting this with your third born. First baby was okay, second was okay, third, this happens. And you're not able to tell the trigger beforehand.
Yes, you're not able to tell the trigger, but especially if it happens after, let's say, your second, after it's happened maybe to your second child or your third child, you can know that the main causes of the reason is the external environment or the social environment. So it is not genetic most of the time.
Have you seen an increase in these cases of postpartum depression, psychosis, or postpartum blues in the last couple of years?
I personally think that they've been in existence even before. It's just that now we are able to speak more about it. Well, now with the advent of creating mental health awareness and speaking about it, now people are able to talk about it, but we are not yet there. Because if we can still have people having postpartum psychosis and we condemn them instead of finding ways to offer them solution, that means we are not yet there at all. Yeah.
You know, so there's, of course, the whole government push for every pregnant mother to go through antenatal care. Make sure that at least you go for 3 of those sessions, you know, and the antenatal care will be able to pick out a lot of things that are happening to you physiologically and to the baby as you're carrying the baby. Is it possible to pick these things out during antenatal visits? To pick that there's something that could happen after you deliver, that there could be triggers and that can then be avoided?
It can be if the practitioners involved have a little bit awareness of this postpartum depression with pregnant women. If there is no awareness, even in normal hospitals, like if the doctor is not aware that this person we don't find any illnesses, but maybe it's a mental illnesses, they need to see a mental health practitioner, the issue won't be resolved. The same with the physical illness, like what is it called, postpartum depression. If the clinician is not able to, it does not have background or just basic understanding on these mental illnesses and how it affects mothers, it will be hard for them to be able to identify it and recommend the necessary interventions.
Does it only begin after birth? Can you start developing some of these depression and depressive episodes when you're still pregnant? Yeah.
So if you develop it when you're still pregnant, we don't call it post. We call them postpartum blues, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, because it's after giving the birth. But before, like they have the prepartum names, but that is not that much common because you also associated them with just the normal mental illnesses. So if you have depression when you're giving birth, I'll have to identify where is this depression coming from. Is it because you're giving birth, or is it normal? Is it, I don't want to say normal depression, is it just depression that is happening to you?
What I'm asking is there a possibility of this postpartum depression? You know, I mean, it's happening within the first week of giving birth. Is it possible that it could have started before? When you were pregnant, and could it be picked out? Because everything else, the other day we were talking about when you have children who are born preterm, or, you know, there's something you could have been picked up during antenatal, that, you know, everything we are seeing could lead to either a preterm birth here, it could lead to a baby being born, you know, in low birth and all. We could see that during antenatal. Can you pick these things out during the antenatal visits and know that this person is highly predisposed to either postpartum blues or depression or psychosis?
It can be highly picked up immediately because, you know, even when you are coming in with mental health, especially since Kenya, we are not yet there to reach whereby we can be able to actualize neuroscience and mental health together in our local hospitals. But if I have a background and you are a you are my client, you are my patient, you've been coming in weekly or monthly for sessions, I can be able to determine your behaviors, your behavioral patterns, and see, okay, there's a change here, there's this, and then explore more. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about this? And then with that, I can be able to figure out maybe this is leading to this, or this is leading to something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I thought you wanted to go. So now I wanted to look and ask, is it possible also that there's something that happens, an event, it could be something major, that then would be the onset of something like this? Because you could say this not had any problem before that, but then after, and then something traumatic would have happened that would then lead to this depression, or then even the psychosis taking place. Is that a possibility?
For psychosis, 100%. Postpartum depression is one of the causes. So apart from genetic causes, environmental causes, there's also the trauma causes and insomnia. Lack of sleep, constant lack of sleep can actually lead to postpartum psychosis, because as a mother you need that much time, enough time of sleep. So that's why we encourage people to give mothers, like, take time, take care of the baby, she sleeps, because if you don't do that, it may lead to postpartum psychosis. But PTSD happens, it's one of the main reasons. Even in people who are not mothers, who are not going through postpartum psychosis, PTSD is something life-changing. And when we're talking about postpartum, we are talking about, what is it called, PTSD, post-traumatic stress event. Any stressor in your life, and stressors can be different. Something may have stressed me is not stressing to you. Something may be stressful for you, and for me be like, that is stressing you, and it is life-changing. So it goes back to you as a person. What is it that if you expose yourself to this environment will trigger you or will cause you to be stressed so much that it can be traumatic to you? And then you pick it up and then stay, especially if when you are an expectant mother, pick it up and then stay away from it. Let's say if you are, if you have, what is it called, you've figured out that what causes traumatic event to me is when I expose myself to certain group of people or certain people with certain personality disorders. Maybe if I expose myself to narcissistic people, I tend to not be well. It affects my mental health. So stay away from them during the period of birth, because now when it stresses you, remember you are two of you, it stresses also your child. And then there is that hormonal, it goes back to you. And that is why we find like neurodevelopmental disorders like autism and ADHD are mostly like developed when the child is in the womb, because of the stresses, the things that you are not able to not only stresses, but most of the things that, especially when the child was in the womb. How are you taking yourself care as a mother? Are you going to industrial area whereby you can take in fumes, because the fumes that you take in will directly affect your baby? And then you find that when your baby is coming out, maybe they have some disformation or whatnot. It's just how you're taking care of your child, which is very important. And sometimes we tend to forget about it. Yeah.
There are some parts where these conversations are not had.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're saying that it doesn't mean that if you are in an urban center is where it is possible then for you to have this conversation about what could essentially be depressing you. We are saying that the prerequisite is, as it were, for this is two be a woman who will have a child. It doesn't mean that where you live in the country stops. So the question is, how are these women being taken care of who are not having a conversation about mental health? The conversation that is being had is survival on a daily basis. So if you're going to couple that with a possible psychological issue, how are we dealing with these? How are we dealing with these problems? When somebody's talking about what they will eat on a daily basis, and then the relatives around you will say, "This one has gone mad," or "This one has been bewitched," and it is a problem that needs some kind of psychological intervention. How is that being handled on a national basis?
On a national basis, I can say that I think a lot of initiatives have come up trying to look into maternal mental health and all these kind of things, which the postpartum depression are into. But what I know from the outreaches we do, because one of the advocacy things we do at Nivish is that we go to community outreaches. And when we go to your community, one thing we try to avoid doing is trying to impose what we know. We find a community person who understands examples in your community, who can be able to communicate in your community language. That's why for us it's community-based mental health intervention, to educate or bring a group of women together so that we share about these experiences. But now what I'm thinking is the more we have advocacy, is the more maybe we can start pushing for policy changes, is more maybe we can start holding our leaders accountable to, like, okay, this hospital need a mental health, a maternal mental health unit whereby a woman going through this can be able to access this. But we are not yet there as a country.
Sure. What happens though? I mean, and then what are the interventions that are being made between this community having this conversation and, agencies like the police, whereby if infanticide takes place, the first reaction is to arrest this mother and put her behind bars.
Yes.
Are there conversations that are being had to say, look, this is actually what is happening, and how can we actually deal with this?
I don't know of any conversations that is being had, and that is why even appreciating like you guys having such a conversation, because it's a heavy conversation. Nobody wants to start the early morning and start talking about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. So using these avenues, maybe if we educate somebody, maybe somebody can just listen, a policymaker or a decision maker outside there can be able to pick out. But at the moment, I don't know of any, because most of the cases that we've had, have we had like any intervention of somebody saying, okay, now the police came and then they're trying to do this test, and then maybe they'll give them mental health intervention or whatnot. Most of the time these cases end up when people are there under custody and they're awaiting trial. These mothers who have tried or who have committed infanticide.
Yeah.
Okay, Amisa, as a founder of Nivisha Foundation, you've been working in the community. Have you engaged with the local leadership?
Yeah.
And for example, in which areas does Nivisha Foundation operate in?
So one thing for our advocacy, we engage with all areas. So we do like what you ask about community health workers. We try as much as we can to educate them, like train community health workers on mental health, because they're in touch with the community. They can be able to refer these people to our centers for the counseling services or whatever intervention that they need. And then the main people that we like interacting with are religious leaders, because we realize that if religious leaders in Kenya, all religions are very much influential. And if you really want to change people's thoughts or attitudes toward accepting mental health, those are the right people to talk to. So if you educate them, share with them about mental health, we hope that with that they can share it with their masses to avoid the things that have been happening of late, like we've had issues of cultism and whatnot. That shows that how much religious leaders are influential. So if they're educated and they can tell you, if you have this issue, you are not going to pray for you or try exorcism on you, so that, and yet you're a mother going through psychosis, they'll try, okay, we'll pray for you, maybe, and then you can go and seek mental health support in whichever institution you are in. But that guidance, so that, because we know a lot of religious leaders will just opt to, let's pray for you, let's do this for you, or spiritual leaders or traditional leaders, take this and this medication and that's it. So how can we engage them into this conversation so that they can start talking to their masses, because we don't have that capacity to talk, to influence some religious people.
In which areas does Nivisha work? Which parts of the country?
We work our headquarters is in Kibra. And but we work with a lot of all informal settlements in Nairobi and specific counties, like we work in Mombasa, Kwale, Garissa, Kisumu and Nakuru.
Okay.
So we are hoping to go into like more to create this awareness and this conversation. But so far, this is how the places we work with.
So apart from religious leaders, do you also engage with government administration officials? For example, does the local chief know about the work that Nivisha is doing? Is a local chief sensitized on these issues of mental health? Because just like Ndu was saying, we see cases of, let's say, infanticide or this kind of violence, and the first thing that the authorities will do is, if the person is taken to the chief will arrest, the chief will hand over to the police will take, the police will take you to court immediately. So for you to make sure that then the chief is aware, that the local OCPD or OCS is aware that this could be a case of a mental health issue, you need to have sensitized them.
Yeah.
Have you reached out to them?
We have reached out, we've worked with them, and especially in Kibra, that one I can say we've had several discussions. But one thing we've also gotten with my team whenever we are having this discussion, if let's say you've been brought up believing this way, there's no like believing prayers work or believing this, there's no way Amisa will just come and have this conversation with you and then expect you immediately to change. There's the process of unlearning, questioning yourself, relearning, learning new things. So it does not happen immediately, but these issues are immediate, that need immediate intervention. So that is where the gap is. Yes, we may do the intervention, but for even me, somebody, maybe I'm a chief who is 50 years old or 40 years old.
Yeah.
The most I can do is I can refer some cases to Nivisha, and then in Nivisha huko atawaongelesha. But after that, you as a chief, do you like know the nitty-gritty? Are you able to change your perspective and mind on top of this? So that is also that goes back to the person or person. Because I can just share with you the knowledge, but the change of attitude and belief system will come from you.
So it'll take a lot.
Yeah.
So what is it that you encounter when you're working in the community? What are these main beliefs? What is it? Is it you said spiritual, yes. Is it spiritual of knowing that this could be God's will, that you feel this way? Or is it spiritual of feeling that this has been, Satan and evil spirits have then infiltrated?
So
is it looking at it from a blessing point, or is it a spiritual attack?
It is a spiritual attack. Most of the time it is a spiritual attack. You see those people who you have even spiritual enemies, like God, like don't allow my enemy to, like all those kind of things. So it is usually spiritual. Maybe you are depressed, you need psychosocial intervention, but I'm not going to give you psychosocial intervention, because we need to pray so that our enemies should stop attacking us and God should make us win against them. You see such kind of things. So coming from being a Muslim perspective, whenever you are saying, but I'm glad nowadays we've had so much of this conversation with imams, to the extent that they are also holding these conversations among themselves. Because before, even now, in some places, you'll find that if I'm not able to, maybe I say that I'm having depression or I'm having suicidal thought, I'll be told how my iman is very low and how it is shaitan, and how I'm supposed to take wudu immediately, pray to God to remove these bad thoughts. And we are not at all disputing the fact that you can be religious or spiritual, but can we have mental intervention and spiritual intervention at the same time, so that as much as you're going to pray, but at the same time you're going to seek on mental health support at the end of the day.
I want to go to the thing is that, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that the majority of the cases of this depression, of this psychosis, are unhandled. Most people will sweep it under the carpet, shove it into the corner. The support from family and friends usually is, it's kept under wraps, of course, because there's still a lot of stigma attached to it. And then, of course, there is the societal outlook that, look, if something leads to you taking the life of another human being, then the place for you to go to is jail. A case be brought against you, and that is dealt with. And it is difficult. It's very, very difficult to see the other side of it, to see that somebody who took the life of somebody else, more so their mother, more so their mother, how dare you? Why would you do something like that? And then we're going to, you're evil, you're a killer, you're a murderer. And here you want us to understand the mental or psychological problem that you may be going through, and then suggest that you go to a hospital and not a prison. Do you see? Very, 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 very difficult conversations to have, because we're saying, okay, let's offer you help. Who offered this child that you killed help?
Yeah, exactly.
Who did that? You see? So for me, these are really layered conversations that need to be had in society. But the question is, from what you've seen, are we really ready to have those conversations? Because what you need to do then is be vulnerable and say that somebody, if not you, somebody close to you is having a mental health problem. But we don't want to say that because it puts so much out there. It displays a position of weakness. It displays a position of what people are going to call madness. You know? How do we deal with something that is so heavily stigmatized?
And that is why I'm saying even us having this discussion is heavy, because now you're understanding the point of a woman goes through a lot, like a mother goes through a lot, and we are not ready to acknowledge that as a community. As a society, our moms are supposed to be saviors. They're supposed to be our to go to. Now imagine the mind shift from now taking your mom, even normal counseling processes whereby somebody have been so hurt by their mom, and then now you as a mental health practitioner, you're trying to figure out and make them understand that your mom was supporting you from their point of the knowledge that they had. They're not superhuman. They're not imperfect. So that one needs a mind change on its own for you. Now imagine for us even having mercy or having grace, extending grace to somebody, how you've murdered your own child, you've actually cut them and did all these kind of things to them. We are not even having, even you, if you try to mediate there, you might be mob justice. Because like you're supporting that evilness. So, and I think it's a good conversation to have so that we also get ideas from people, like how do you, from us as, because we are trying to do our advocacy part, but we also want to learn from the community, how can we handle this now with the knowledge that we already have on these matters.
When someone comes to you, when let's say a woman who has just given birth is feeling something, and they come to your organization, the Visha Foundation, what do you do?
That's a normal person, or let's say a mother.
A mother. A mother has she's heard about Nivisha Foundation, she's heard all these people deal with, even, and then she comes, she just says, I'm not sure exactly what I'm feeling, but she walks through your doors. What do you do?
Yeah, you see the way you can walk into a hospital and then there is the whole process whereby you'll be, what is it called? You'll have to do the consultation. Yeah, and then there'll be the, what is it called? The testing to determine what kind of disease that you have. And then now you go to different, and then now the intervention whereby you'll be given medication or be told it is the same process. You come, we try to understand where you are coming from, where you are at the moment. Are you in a position to even have this conversation? If yes, now let's move to the next process. What are your signs and symptoms? Like as a counseling psychologist, I know like the mental illnesses that are there. So we classify them. We do a test for you, and then you classify, is it a sign of depression? Is it a sign of postpartum depression? Is it what? And then after that, what is the possible treatment that you can be able to be supported with? Sometimes even for some mothers, especially who are going through postpartum blues, just having a group of women, joining a group to know that I was not alone, and it's normal to feel this way, and I'm not a bad mother, and it's okay, that's enough for them. For others, it will need, and then the other thing is, when you are dealing now with this postpartum depression, you'll have to unpack a lot of issues that, guess what? It came from your childhood, the mother's childhood. So most mental illnesses, unfortunately, stem from our childhood. So now you'll have to unpack all those issues again and again. But once that is done, at least you're in a better place.
And then now you send the woman back home?
Yes, but it also depends, because there's some depression, like, you know, there are different levels of depression.
Yeah.
There's some depression whereby counseling can work, talk therapy can work. There's some depression whereby, because that is your mind that is mostly affected, your thought, behaviors, and feelings. But there is the depression whereby your hormones, your brain chemicals, and your mind are together. So that means I'll have to give you antidepressant or different medication to stabilize your hormones, and then now we can be able now to deal with the mind. Exactly.
I'm not hearing anywhere where you want to reach out to the immediate family members.
Unless, so
Because
what
this
we-
person maybe comes from a household. There are other children. There is another adult, maybe the husband, maybe parents. What do you do? Because they're the ones who are seeing the way this woman is behaving, and she just got a baby. What's wrong with you? Nyonyesha mtoto ni nini?
Yeah, exactly. So whenever there's a take-in, whenever somebody comes, there's the take-in.
Right, interesting conversation there on postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis.